Welcome back to another Mech Deck Tech. Today we have another custom build for you from Aetherdrift, featuring Mendicant Core Guidelight. This cheap little Azorius artifact robot is here to copy our artifact spells, and copying spells can be quite powerful. So, who are they? How exactly do they work? Well, they are a star 3 for Azorius, right? So 2 mana means we're almost guaranteed to get them out on turn 2, 3 at the latest. Their power is equal to the number of artifacts we control. So that means they're always going to be at least a 1/3. But this deck has tons of artifacts, so I think they're going to be much higher than that on average. They also have the Start Your Engines mechanic. So Start Your Engines makes it so whenever they enter, we're going to get our speed up to 1. Then, once per turn on our turns, when an opponent takes damage, bam, right? We're going up to, speed 2, 3, and eventually to max speed, at which point their other ability is turned on, which says, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you can go ahead and pay 1 and just copy it. The copy becomes a token, and we're good to go. So how are we getting our speed up? Well, we are running Cybermint Patrol for 1, right? This is a 2/2 for 2. Gives all of our artifact creatures Afflict 3. So if you decide you want to block one of our artifact creatures, we're hitting you for damage anyway. So you don't block, we get them for damage. Our speed goes up. You do block, guess what? You took damage, our speed's going up. We love it either way. Gold Forged Thopteryx. Right? This is another little Azorius artifact creature. This one is a Dinosaur Thopter. So, it's a 1/3 flying lifelinker. Gives each of our legendary creatures ward, which is phenomenal, right? A little protection. But, again, not all of your opponents are always going to have flying or reach. So this is just a really good way of being like, hey, I only need to hit a couple times and I'm going to get my bonuses, we're going to get up to max speed, and we're going to start copying these artifacts. Kappa Cannoneer. So Kappa Cannoneer is a 4/4 for 6 with Improvise, so our artifacts can kind of help pay for him. Whenever he or another artifact enters the battlefield under our control, he gets bigger, and bam, we get to tap down a creature, right? We're going to lower these defenses, we're going to get in for that damage, and we're going to raise our speed. Psy Master Thopterist is in a very similar vein to the other Thopterists that we've seen, right? He's going to come in, he's going to create us 2 1/1 flyers. He's a 1/4 by himself, and those Thopters are going to be able to get past someone's defenses to help get our speed up. He's also a nice little card draw engine, so a little bonus on top. Scrawling Crawler is also pulling double duty here. So Scrawling Crawler is a 3/2 for 3. Beginning of our upkeep, everyone's going to draw a card. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose life. So this is phenomenal, right? Granted, we're only going to go up 1 speed for this, and we are giving out a little bit of card draw, a little bit of value to our opponents, but we're punishing them for having any extra card draw on top of it, and we're getting our speed up, and the value we're going to gain from copying our spells, in my opinion, outweighs the value we're giving from, free card draw, or card draw in this case for 1 life. Stride Hanger Automaton. We actually just love Thopters in this deck, and he makes more of them. Now, he will only make them whenever we would create 1 or more tokens, and it's worth noting that copying a spell, although it comes in as a token, does not count as creating tokens. So, just a rules clarification. You might be thinking, Mech, we've only really seen, 1 thing that really creates tokens so far. I assure you, there's more. No need to worry. He also powers up all of our Thopters, which is nice, because again, we actually have a fair bit of Thopter support kind of just in this deck. Keeping up with our Thopter theme, we are running Efficient Construction, so whenever we cast an artifact spell, we are going to create a Thopter. Again, those Thopters can kind of swing in, get us what we need. As well as the Thopter Spy Network, right? So, Thopter Spy Network, 4 mana, we're going to get a Thopter at upkeep, and that's also card draw on top of it, right? We've actually touched on quite a bit of card draw, so I think this is a good time to jump over to that card draw. We're going to start off with Trading Post. So Trading Post is really just a toolbox of a card, right? I think it makes sense to run it in quite a few decks. It's 4 mana, doesn't do anything on its own at that point. You have to pay a little bit of extra mana into it, but I assure you will have mana to do things. So we could pay 1 life, tap it, discard a card, gain 4 life. Not always the worst thing in the world, right? We have reasons why we might want to have some artifacts in our grave, so I don't hate it. We could pay 1 and tap it, pay a life, and create a little goat. I care about that a little less, but, you know, because of this next part, I understand why it's there. So we could also pay 1, tap it, sacrifice a creature, maybe that goat, and return an artifact from grave to hand. And finally, we could pay 1, tap, and sacrifice an artifact in order to draw a card. Is it the most efficient piece of card draw in this deck? Certainly not. But it is a good utility piece that allows us to kind of recur artifacts as well as draw them. Mystic Forge. So you might be thinking to yourself, Mech, Mystic Forge isn't card draw. And it's like, on the one hand, you are technically correct. Mystic Forge isn't card draw, but what it is the ability to look at the top card of our library. If it happens to be an artifact, we can cast it. And if we don't like what's there, we can pay 1 life, tap it down, and exile that top card. So it's effectively 1 extra card in your hand every turn, if not more. So it's card draw adjacent, it's card advantage, I'm gonna count it here. Key to the City. This is actually another card that I could have included in our, hey, we're helping to get our speed up to max. So Key to the City is a nice little artifact for 2 mana. 2's about like our average. Actually in this deck, it's a super low curve. But we can tap it down and discard a card. If we do, we make a creature unblockable for the turn, right? Unblockable creature punches, our speed goes up. Whenever it becomes untapped, we can pay 2 mana and have a little extra card draw. Moving up into our sorceries, we are running Voyage Home, right? Voyage Home actually features our commander in the art. They make sense to go together. Now this is normally 7 mana, draw 3, gain 3, right? Not bad, but the fact that it has affinity for artifacts means that we're often only paying Azorius for this. So right, 2 mana to draw 3 cards, gain 3 life, is just really a chef's kiss moment to me. Thought Monitor follows that up. They are definitely mainly here for the card draw, right? So they are a 2/2 Thopter. Nope, not a Thopter. They are a 2/2 construct with flying for 7 mana. They do have affinity for artifacts, so we're almost never paying that 7. Looking to pay really 1, but even at like a 2 or 3, I'd probably pay it. Reality Chip. So the Reality Chip is phenomenal, right? 2 mana, 0/4. We can look at the top card of our library, and if we reconfigure it for 3 mana, we can start casting things off the top. Sad Robot, aka Solemn Simulacrum, follows them up. They only let you draw when they die, but we do have ways of kind of sacrificing these things and recurring them, so I am going to count them here. They also do a nice job of ramping us a little bit, right? Thin out the deck, make sure we always have mana. We're looking for that excess mana pretty often, because, right, we want to copy these spells as we're casting them. Last of our pseudo card draw, card advantage type effects is Emery, Lurker of the Lock. So Emery is a 3-cost 1/2 when they enter. They are going to mill us for some cards, but we can tap them down and cast artifacts from our grave. Only 1 a turn, but still pretty good. So, we've increased our speed, we've drawn a bunch of cards. Let's talk about our ramp package, right? We're not in green, so aside from the Solemn Simulacrum, we're not really grabbing a bunch of lands here, but we do have a bunch of mana reduction. Ethereum Sculptor. So Ethereum Sculptor is a 2-cost 1/2, reduces all of our artifact spells by 1 generically, and they're an artifact creature, meaning that we could copy them, right? Double up on that artifact cost reduction, along with Foundry Inspector. A 3/2 for 3 that again is an artifact creature that reduces all of our artifact spells by 1. So if our speed is maxed, we could copy them and really just get a lot of mana reduction, basically only ever paying for those colored pips. We were, of course, running Gold Mirror. So the Gold Mirror is a 1/1 for 2 that taps down for white mana, along with their counterpart in this deck, the Silver Mirror, which is a 1/1 for 2 that taps down for blue mana. Of course, we didn't forget about them. We are running the Ornithopter of Paradise. So Ornithopter of Paradise is a 2-cost 0/2 flyer that can tap down for mana of any color. Moving down into our non-creature-based ramp, we are running an Arcane and an Azorius Signet. We're running Cloud Key, right, which is going to let us choose artifacts and reduce their cost. Replicating Ring, which is going to cost us 3. Go ahead and tap down for any color, and eventually spawn a bunch of extra rings. Soul Ring, naturally, basically every commander deck. A Talisman of Progress, which comes in, taps for a colorless, or we could pay a life to tap for either of our colors. And the last piece of ramp in this deck is a Thought Vessel, which gives us no max hand size. I feel like we have a fair bit of very recurrable card draw. And although, if we have Emery, maybe we have access to 1 card from our grave each turn, 2 if we also have a trading post, I just don't think that it's enough. And for that reason, I want that max hand size for us. Let's get cloney with it, right? We are here to copy our artifacts and abuse their effects. So starting off, we have a Mechanized Production. Mechanized Production is a chef's kiss in really any deck in my mind. But they really shine in these artifact decks. So for 4 mana, we get to enchant an artifact that we control. Beginning of our upkeep, we're going to create a token copy of the enchanted artifact. Then, if we control 8 or more artifacts with the same name, doesn't have to be the enchanted one, we just win, right? Like I said earlier, we have a ton of Thopter output, and those Thopters are just named Thopter. So pretty easy for us to win through a Mechanized Production. Artificer class. So Artificer class is phenomenal in my mind as well. 1, it is a mana reducer. We actually should have touched on it just a moment ago, but that's okay. We're touching on it here. You can level it up for as low as 2 mana. When you do, you basically reveal off the top until you hit an artifact. It goes into hand, the rest go to the bottom. It's going to hit something pretty quick. But the coup de grace, right, the chef's kiss for us, is that level 3, where at the beginning of our end step, we get to create a copy of one of our artifacts. World Walker Helm. So this is a 3-cost artifact. It's from the big score sheet from Thunder Junction, a couple sets back. So the first part of it is that if we would create 1 or more artifact tokens, we also get to create an extra map, which is cool, right? Don't hate that. Why it's really here is for that second effect. For 1 blue, you tap it down, create a token that's a copy of an artifact token that you already control. And we're making artifact tokens left and right. I think this is pretty easy for us. March of Progress follows that up. So March of Progress is a 3-cost sorcery. We could overload it for 7, but it's either going to create a token copy of one of our artifacts or a token copy of each of our artifacts. Both effects are great. Definitely want to overload it, but I can see situations where it makes sense to just go ahead and create the 1 copy. Not necessarily a clone spell, but definitely a way of setting us up to clone things that we might have missed the opportunity to, right? And that is Master Transmuter. So this is 4 mana. They're a 1/2. We could pay 1 blue, tap them down, bounce an artifact, put an artifact out. So with our commander, once we're at max speed, whatever artifact we bounce back to our hand, when we go to recast it, we could pay that extra 1 and create token copies of it, and just sort of rinse and repeat this all day. Last thing I want to touch on for this deck is, honestly, the tutors. We actually have quite a few in the deck. Starting off with the Tribute Mage. So Tribute Mage is a 2/2 for 3. When they come in, we get to tutor for an artifact that costs exactly 2. Like I said, and you've probably seen throughout this video, We just have a ton of 2-cost artifacts, so the world is really our oyster with them. Fabricate is going to follow them up. So Fabricate lets us, for 3 mana, look for any artifact, add it to our hand. Whirl of Invention. So Whirl of Invention is a 3 blue X spell that has Improvise. So again, we could pay into it with just tapping down our artifacts. We could look for an artifact with mana value of X, slam it onto the field, have a good time with it. Repurposing Bay. So Repurposing Bay is phenomenal. I ended up pulling 1 copy from the pre-release, and then I ended up ordering another copy specifically for this deck. But for 3 mana, you get an artifact that lets you pay 2 mana, tap and sacrifice an artifact to grab an artifact that costs exactly 1 more than it. And although 2 is our kind of big number, we definitely have ways of chaining up to the rest of the cards. Now, there is a clone that I didn't touch on. We're going to call it an honorable mention here. I just don't have extra copies lying around. None of the local shops that I happen to peruse had any in their cases or in their binders. But Esoteric Duplicator. So Esoteric Duplicator is another big scorecard. The big scorecards are actually all kind of crazy good. But for 3 mana, you have this artifact Clue. Whenever it or another artifact is sacrificed, we can pay 2 mana. If we do, we get to create a token copy of it at the end step. And, being a Clue, we can obviously pay the 2 mana, sacrifice the duplicator, and draw a card. So, the only reason it's not in my version of the deck is because there were no local copies, but it's definitely good, and if I had an extra copy, I would put it in the deck. But obviously, that's not the entire deck. If you want to take a look at the full deck list over on Moxfield, as always, there is a link in the description below. You know, are there cards that you felt like, mech, those don't make sense, I don't feel like you have enough support to run that? Are there cards that you're like, mech, I know this is a budget build, as all of yours are, but I feel like you're missing this kind of key piece? You know, let me know in the comments section down below. But as always, these episodes are brought to you by Arcane Fortress, makers of fine TCG accessories including deck boxes, sleeves, binders, playmats, and more. There is a link down in the description which will save you 5% off your purchase, as well as kick back a little bit of money to help support this channel. Of course, you never need to spend any money to support this channel. You could just like, comment, subscribe, and watch our videos. Share them with friends and family. Grow the mighty army of mechanized minion. But until next time, good luck with your builds.